Hi, guys. Welcome back to Scale with Clarity. Today's conversation is one that stayed with me long after we stopped recording because, yes, my guest and I talk about business, operations, and what it takes to actually scale. But underneath all of that, this is really a conversation about identity, about what happens when you realize you've been operating in survival mode for most of your life and what it takes to slow down, rebuild, and figure out who you actually are underneath all of it. Sandy Davis is a fractional COO who helps founders bring structure to growing businesses. But what struck me most in our conversation wasn't just what she does. It's how deeply her personal journey has shaped the way she works. After experiencing burnout, loss, and a major life transition, Sandy started asking bigger questions about success, about alignment, and what it really means to build a business that supports your life, not drains it. If this sounds familiar, it's because I've talked about my own journey very similarly. If you've ever felt like things are working on paper, but something still feels off, or you've caught yourself constantly pushing through without really stopping to ask why, I think this conversation is going to resonate in a big way. So let's get into it. Welcome to Scale with Clarity, the podcast for entrepreneurs who are building a business and a life that actually feels good. I'm Brooke Cunninger, fractional CFO, strategist, and mom of three. And I've learned that scaling isn't just about hitting revenue milestones. It's about finding alignment between your big vision and your everyday reality. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with founders who are redefining success on their own terms. We'll talk about the pivots, the aha moments, and the tough decisions behind the scenes. Plus, the surprising ways entrepreneurship becomes the greatest personal growth journey of all. Whether you're dreaming of leaving corporate, navigating the messy middle, or trying to grow without burning out, this show is here to help you scale with more clarity, confidence, and ease. Because building a business should expand you, not deplete you. Let's scale with clarity together. Sandy, hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Brooke. Thank you for having me.
Of course, I was so excited when we talked last time. And as we do, Sandy and I have been talking for quite a bit before we even pushed record on here. But Sandy, you and I met and we hopped on a call, and every part of your story and what you're passionate about and what you're doing now, I was like, yes, 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 yes. So I was like, please come on the podcast and tell more about this. As I told you before we started recording, I was like, I want to dive into your story. I want to dive into what you're doing now. And I think it's going to be so beneficial to those listeners that are out here, either thinking about what their next step is and feeling like they're stuck in their corporate job, or having started their business and saying, where do I go from here and what do I need to focus on? So thank you for being on the podcast. And to start, can you introduce yourself and talk about your business now before we go dive deep back into your background? That's right.
Right. So we don't do this backwards.
That's
where
right.
I'm telling my emotional journey.
We're
and
crying.
Be like,
Everyone grab a tissue.
Right, talk about this fractional work. Just grab. So I'm Sandy Davis. I'm the founder of Elevate Operations Advisory. And basically what my company does, or what I do, is I work with founders whose businesses have grown faster than their systems. So I step in as a fractional COO to build the structure and operations behind the business so it can scale without everything falling on the founder. One of the things I usually tell founders is, if you can go out and try to chase business for 2 weeks without your business failing, great. If you can't leave your desk, or you can't not answer the phone for 2 hours and everything goes to hell, call me and then I'll help build that up. And that's what happens. I mean, for myself as well, when you are a founder and owner, you are every department. You are IT. And I realized I'm not a great IT person, so I need to get my act together and generate more money so I can hire somebody for IT and marketing and research, even though we have AI, but you also have to check to make sure that the data is correct and then be able to speak to it. I come in anything like founders, owners, knowledge living in their heads. I can pull it out and be able to help you scale up that way, as well as companies that already have been in business for a while where they're growing. So they're growing is faster than their operations can handle. right?
I mean,
And being able to do a reset on that.
every business, if you're listening and you have your own business, I know you're shaking your head. You're in that now. You've been in that phase. I'm shaking my head because I mean, it's a natural evolution, right? Most of us start as solopreneurs. We have to wear all the hats. And even if I even find if it's my functional expertise, so obviously for me, it's finance, and strategy around and a little bit of operations, which is why I was like, I need to meet Sandy too, because we probably have a lot of overlap in the types
Yeah.
of clients that we're serving as well. But even if it's your area of expertise, to have somebody else that you can talk through it with, because when it's in your head and you're just doing, you're in such reactive mode, I find. And so to be able to talk to someone who can like kind of pull that out and like be a third party, like a witness, a mirror to say, here's what we're doing and just kind of bring that clarity. Obviously, I love clarity because that's the name of my
Yes.
company. I think it's so beneficial. And here's the thing that I want to say, and this might be a segue back to, kind of your story, but the like, we bring ourselves wherever you are, so I know a lot of business owners who have left their corporate job have deep, deep expertise that they've built up through the years of what they've always done. But if you are used to being in that reactive mode, that kind of burnout mode, that like always on productive mode, you're going to take that into your business too, whether you notice it consciously or subconsciously. And so to be able to kind of have somebody that can recognize that and kind of help you bring it down and really prioritize what the important things are, I think is obviously goes without saying.
That is my A1 skill. Because I always, when I worked in corporate America, so I was in commercial real estate for 18 years. Before that, I was in investment banking. And now I have my own company. One thing I do can identify quickly is no matter what you're doing, corporate America or your own, you have to be emotionally sound, right? Your mind has to be clear. We hold things too close to our chest. There are a lot of times where we have versions of ourselves, and we'll get into that,
Yeah.
where I call it almost the imposter syndrome. So we have different versions. We have the hard ass version of us. We have I have to, do the whip, or I have to do this myself, or, you spiral.
Yeah.
You can be successful and still spiral. And then now there's a need for a change. You can't identify it because you're used to being in the fire. And one thing I even heard it a couple of weeks ago. Anybody who has ever grown up in chaos prefers order.
Really?
Anybody who grows up in chaos prefers order. So I can identify chaos quickly. I can read somebody quickly. That's a survival tactic, right? Where it's like, okay, this person is high strung. I know I need to adjust my tone,
Yeah.
or I need to smile more, or, let them do the talking. So for that person, you have to identify what that type of person is, what
Yeah.
that type of founder is, and be able to be like, okay, now I have to tell you in a gentle way, this is how you're going to have to pivot.
Yeah.
A lot of times people just like, I just need to hire more people. I was like, great, you have onboarding. Who are you hiring?
Yeah.
And they're just like, I don't know. Great. Is there any documentation? Be like, here are the applications that we use. Here's our process. Here's the beginning from sourcing
Yeah.
and trying to find, to pitch, to signing, to going through whatever you have to go through, closing out that client. And then you still have to follow up afterwards,
Yeah.
anniversaries. A lot of people don't know that. They're just like, I'm just chasing the dollar.
Moving.
And I'm like, all right, so you're in survival mode.
Yeah.
You're in survival mode. That is also an emotional aspect of business. So whether in corporate America again or doing your own, if you are not, you're getting you have to get out of survival mode. You have to get out of only me. I only know. I need help. No one is doing what I need for them to do. You're going to still spiral.
It's like you're a therapist coach, but also a consultant. You kind of have to check all those boxes.
Listen, we need a therapist department. That's what corporate America could do.
I love what you said in your bio, and I'll read it in the intro. Everyone will have heard it when they listen to this, but you talk about building a business that fits the life or around the life that you want. And that absolutely resonates with me because I'm super, super passionate about that as opposed to fitting your life into the business, because that is what can easily happen. And exactly what you're talking about, I think to build a business around the life that you want, one, it takes understanding what is that life that you want, which is a real introspective, kind of exercise to do. But then it takes really knowing yourself. Because if you're, again, in reactive mode and you're in chaos and you're just kind of pushing forward and you're just bringing in new clients or whatever it may be, you're building a business perhaps not thoughtfully around what you want it to be and just what it naturally will be. And that's what your actions are doing. So to be able to kind of pause at that point and say, what do I really want? What is important to me? And what should this look like? And what's the person that I need to be able to build this is really important. What's the saying? Simple but not easy, or easy but not simple. It's the simple question, but it's not really easy to answer because it takes a lot of thought. So for you to be able to slow an owner down too and kind of mirror them in that as well is super important. Or even just ask those questions of like, what are we building and why, and what's important, and who are the people that you're bringing on to support that vision is just, I think, is the unlock to be able to really build that business that you want versus what it will ultimately just end up being.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people are very reactive, and a lot of people don't ask the question of like, what do you want to do? What is my purpose? What gives me the gumption to get up every day and have that drive? Before starting Elevate Operations, again, I've done operations nationally and regionally for over 25 years, was in investment banking, originally from New York. And that was in my 20s. So it was, 20s, early 30s. That was the first time I actually experienced where you have to wear many versions of yourself.
Talk about the hustle and grind culture of having to just like get in and fit in with the culture that is already established there. Yeah.
Right. And so you had different versions of you depending on the day of the week, and you're dealing with these brokers, these investment brokers, these analysts. And when you're entering into that career, you have to put on like, what version of myself do I need today? The confidence or being able to anticipate the question that is going to be asked and have the answer already. And being a woman, especially a woman of color in that business, my mom used to always tell me, you have two strikes against you. You're Black and you're a woman. So you're going to have to work harder. And I applied that. Before I was like, why would you tell a child that? But I get it. And, I've had male mentors and they were pit bulls, and, they would tell me like, Sandy, you can't get married and you can't have kids if you want to be successful. And at the time I didn't question it, but, years later I was like, do you even say that to men? Hey, don't get married and don't have kids. I was like, as a matter of fact, if you're a male and not married and don't have
actually
kids
is a strike
30s,
against you. Yeah.
Right.
I know. It's
Right.
the double-edged sword of, yeah.
So we, as women in particular, we start to forget who we are, right? Because we have all these different versions and we have to shrink ourselves to fit into rooms that we probably don't belong in anyway, or we've outgrown. So at that time, I still had that autonomy of that freedom and like, hey, I'm going to learn everything that I possibly can. And then when the bubble bursted in 2008, I upped and moved to SoCal. And that was like the craziest thing. And this story I share with everybody. So I remember I got laid off on a Wednesday. And it was with an investment banking firm, and you wanted to get laid off quick because you had your package.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, the later you stayed on, the package was dwindling. So I was like, I'm going to the movies during the workday. Like, you have to scan it. Like,
yes.
They was like saying, we haven't seen you for like 2 hours. And I was like, went to the movies, trying to get myself fired or just laid off.
And which wave am I going to be that's coming?
And a friend of mine, and we'll talk about it later, my friend of mine was like, you got promoted. I got promoted. Well, everybody else was getting laid off. I was getting promoted. I was like, man, I have to be more outlandish. So it finally happened. It was a Wednesday, and this is when Craigslist was still big. So, and online media was launched. So New York Times Online had just launched, and it was like, match your personality to where you should live. And it was Florida, Colorado, and San Diego. So Florida, I was like, nope, too many beautiful men out there. I'll probably just have a bunch of babies and lose myself. So can't do that. I was like, Colorado. I was like, there black people in Colorado? I was like, no, I'll fit the description as no matter what. They'd be like, they'd be like, no, we know where she's at. I'd be like, can't do that. So San Diego it was. So I put out an ad on Craigslist, like, looking for a roommate situation. I also need somebody to show me around California because I've never been.
Were you
Never.
in this story though? What prompted you to want to move? And it just to start with, you were
No
looking for
more
a new.
snow. There's many reasons and no
Yeah.
reasons at all. So I
Yeah.
would tell folks like, oh, I got tired of shoveling the snow or the
Yeah.
cold. There was another thing, like my mom was a huge Frank Sinatra fan. So I was like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I was like, all right,
Let's
let's
see.
put that test. Or two, it was just this crazy notion where it's like, hey, I've outgrown New York
Mm-hmm.
and I want to go somewhere else and I don't know where that somewhere else is, but I'm going to go and figure that out. Right. And I tell people like, this is not for the faint hearts, so don't do what I do. But if you're going to do it, don't come back to me complaining, like saying this is crazy. Be like, yeah, I told you it was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So laid off Friday. I booked a flight, laid off Wednesday, booked a flight for Friday and was in San Diego. I saw a little bit of Orange County, some of LA. And that was the first time I actually watched a real sunset because being a New Yorker, sunsets is behind the buildings.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I love this. So I had a roommate situation. It was a nice house. And I got back to New York that Monday and I told my friends, I was like, guess who's moving to Cali?
Wow.
And they was just like, what?
It's been 5 days since you were laid off. But
it was like, do you even know anybody in California? I'd be like, no, but they got fruit trees. The beaches don't close. They got showers there. I was like, did not understand the homeless situation. It is very big out here. But I was like, in a way, I get it. Like, we got fruit trees. And so I gave everything away, moved to Southern California, was a tourist for like maybe 3 weeks, and then eventually landed into commercial real estate as operations, and built my career off of there for 18 years. So with that, I had more versions because now I had to shed some of the New York versions of myself to make sure that I was taken seriously and palatable for people in SoCal.
Do you, looking back at that point in your life, do you think you were getting closer to your true self, or were you perhaps getting further just as far? You're just kind of shedding one jacket and putting on a different one.
I was completely lost. I had so many versions of myself from the 20s.
Yeah.
Then when I moved out here, it was 30s and 40s. I forgot my authentic self. I lost my authentic voice.
So many people I talk to, and it's usually around your 40s. So you're like, who am I? And you know what I think, Sandy? I've talked about this before on the podcast, but your story just kind of illuminates that too, is that, you put this jacket on or this, whatever, the mask, whatever you say, to get to the next level, and you become less of yourself, but say, when I get to that, that's when it's like the door's going to open to happiness and success. That's going to feel really like me then. But you forget that you have kind of hidden yourself. It's impossible to then get to that level and then all of a sudden be yourself, because you're just getting less and less of it. And so many women, especially people I talk to, that get to kind of that level, and then they're like, what have I been working for the last 20, 30 years? Like, I have gotten so far off. I've checked this box, but is this even what I want now? And then you feel so lost, like you're like on this boat with no direction, like you're floating around.
And that was exactly what happened to me. It was a matter of, and I wrote about it, where it's like, these 3 phases of your life that you go through. So in your 20s, you're almost fearless, right? And, there's some that are, one of my friends says, I'm trying to get on my MRS, so there's that pathway. And then there's the career path. And then 30s and 40s, you're just trying to establish who you are, but you don't really know who you are. You are trying to establish what others are
You
trying to.
think would be that,
Right.
yeah.
They want you to be this version. So you completely lose it. And then a couple of years ago, I started really experiencing just the burnout.
Yeah.
And
Will
I
you
got tired
talk about
of.
what that actually looks like? We hear about it a lot, but like, what did that look like for you? Because I think we're like, oh, I'm tired. It's been a long week, but it turns into months. But yeah, how did
So
that manifest for you?
this is going to be the deeper version. I got tired of lying when people be like, tell me a bit about yourself. And I would automatically talk about my career. Like most women, tell me a bit about yourself. We automatically talk about what we do, or if we're married, if we
Title,
have
who you work
kids.
for. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just all, we're talking about our acts of service, right? We're
Yep.
not
Yep.
talking about who we are. So then the question would be, well, what do you do for fun? And I'd be like, well, hiking and walking my dog. And in the back of my mind, I'm just like, you ain't really big into hiking. Like, yeah, we go for
Yeah.
walks because I have to
Yeah.
walk the dog. But I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I forgot what I enjoy. I
Well, you know
forgot
what?
what makes me
And you know what
happy.
I've said, Sandy? Besides forgetting, I've said this before again too, but it was like a badge of honor. I was like, I don't have time for hobbies. I am too busy. Like that was like all encompassing, and that's all you needed to know. Because like, if I had time for hobbies, that's just like for other people. But like, that is a problem, not just because we know that it fills you up, but if you think that your whole identity should only be your job or your mom, a mom or a sister or a wife or a daughter or whatever, that is the tip of the iceberg of the layer of who you actually are. And so that's just symbolic, I think, of
But we're
exactly how
trained that way
yeah.
without even realizing we are trained that way.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can go up to anyone and be like, tell me who you are. And they will tell you about their career. They'll tell you about their marriage, their kids, but just basically their career. And that was the first tip of the mountain that started to break.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And, going before that, I was like, why can't I say who I am? And I come from an abusive household, right? So I've had the physical abuse, the sexual abuse. I was ward of the state. No one ever really knew that part of, my story. Even, blood relatives,
Yeah.
I was like, how come you've never asked what happened? They just
Yeah.
assumed I grew up in a loving two-parent home and, silver spoon. And I went to college and I was like, oh,
Far
but
from it.
I was
Yeah.
like, but I used to give my mom kudos. I was like, this was the best imposter
Yeah.
syndrome ever, so it's toxic. She had her pains. My dad had his pains. And then going through therapy, from 15 years old until I graduated high school, and then throwing myself out there, eventually landing in investment banking. So I think I dove into being this career woman because I didn't want anyone to remember me as, oh, she was the abused kid, or,
Yeah.
misunderstood. She's from the Bronx or she's from Yonkers, like,
Yeah.
she lacks education. So that already comes with the stigma.
Yeah.
So I was at the time I welcomed these different versions, and I would never correct somebody who was like, oh yeah, I'm sure you probably have your master's, or, you speak so well, and you catch on quickly. And I was just like, yeah, yep, that's me all day. That's
You
me.
got it.
Um, and as I'm going through life, I was just like, I'm not happy. I'm
Yeah.
not taking time off. I'm not traveling. And it was becoming toxic. It got to the point where it's like, I can't believe I have to do layoffs. And, we have this corporate event that I know how much money that we're spending the next day. Did we really have to do that?
Yeah.
So it was starting to break me down, my moral code. And I was like,
Yeah.
I have a moral code. And so
Yeah.
I
You were
wanted to
like,
kind
that's
of,
my values there that are starting to really shine, which I've just been pushing down for so long. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just forgot about, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, um, so what happened was 2.5 years ago, I lost both my parents within 37 days. So my dad went first, and I had to leave California, go back to New York. And that was my first real impact of death, right? I never really experienced somebody so close to me die. And trying to like, oh my God, I don't have my dad anymore.
Yeah.
And, so trying to process that, but it was like I had to get back to work.
Yeah.
There was nobody that was going to really do the job that you needed to get done. They can try to help, but then there's also that um, disassociated, I'm a career woman. No one can do it better than
Yeah.
me. So let me get back anyway. And then 36 days later, my mom passed.
Yeah.
And now that was just a part of the mountain that really broke because I'm like, okay, I now am an orphan. I don't know how to navigate through life. Like, I don't have my calls anymore with my mom daily
Yeah.
or the text daily. I don't have my Sunday calls with my dad. And it was like, huh. And I'm not happy with work. I'm not happy with the toxic environment, the sabotaging, it was starting to break. And then,
Yeah.
coming close to 50 and then turning 50. Now, so it was the perfect storm.
All of it. Yeah.
The perfect storm, it just hit me all at once, and I just completely lost it. I lost control. I went into a deep, dark depression. Um, and I was just in a space where I've been in dark places before, but this was different. And it was like, okay, I have more years behind me than in front of me and working. So I need to be intentional about
Yeah.
what I want to do going forward. So that means I had to actually sit down and do the work internally. So I reached out to one of my best friends, like, she's a therapist. There were groups, but I was like, I'm not going to really tell my story. I have to sit down and really
Process it
figure this
yourself.
out.
Yeah.
Plus, we are not always as honest, even when we talk to therapists, right? We will just give them, this is what I'm going to talk about. Here are my issues.
Yeah.
Even if you ask me great questions, it's like, yeah, I'm not going through that. So you still own that.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is me that I have to do this on my own. And it took a year. And with that, I decided to step out of corporate America. I was like, I can't do this. This was not the right environment for me. Um, and so Elevate Operations was like, well, I've done operations, so that's a low hanging fruit. I can start that business. Still trying to heal. And I've never been
Yeah.
an entrepreneur before. And that is not something in my household growing up or in the 70s. I didn't have that. You could be anything you want to be
Yeah.
and you can have your own business. It was like, nope, you will either work in corporate America
Yeah.
or you can work for the city or the government.
You don't
There's
even know
no
it's an
other options.
option.
Right.
That was a crazy. Yep. Yeah.
So I was like, I have to get myself right. And one of the healing processes I started doing was I started journaling, right? My friends were saying like,
Mm.
Sandy, you need to start journaling and asking those tough questions within yourself to not just find the old version of myself, like what I liked, the fearlessness, the stepping out, the having faith, but also who do I want to be
Yeah.
intentionally going forward, and making that dash on the tombstone when you go to any cemetery. I tell people, I was like, it's not the name that's the most impactful. It's not the dates. It's really that small dash that is between when you were born to when you cross over.
Yeah.
That dash represents your life. That dash is what everybody is going to talk about at your eulogy. That dash is what everybody's going to talk about after you have crossed over physically, but you're still alive within
Yeah.
others and how you've impacted them. So I was like, I want to make this dash count and started journaling. My friend was like, you should put it on Substack. And I was like, don't know what Substack is. She's like, just get it out there. You might be able to help one or, two women or a couple of women or a couple people that are going through
Yeah.
that spiraling. And how are you getting yourself out and you're doing rapid work and it's working. And I was just like, yep, some days it works, some days it doesn't. Every day I'm talking to myself. And so I was like, yeah, I'll put it out there. Well, that started resonating
Yeah.
with people and sharing, my story, and sharing little anecdotes of how I, prevent myself from spiraling or I don't listen to that
Yeah.
negative voice in my head. I still keep showing up. I still smile. Do I have bad days? Yes. And in the process of that and meeting with you and everybody else, I was like, I want to start sharing my story and hearing others people's stories, not the edited version,
Yeah.
Not the, hey, I left corporate America because of this. So we talk about that trauma. And I
Yeah.
was like, and I started this business and now
It's
I make
beautiful.
300K a month and this is awesome. And so I'll be sitting there like, what you doing in the
Yeah.
middle?
Yep. But tell me the exact steps that you took, because wait a second, there's a whole period in between. Don't tell
I
me
was
that
like,
just took
listen,
3 months.
I don't have that luxury. I was like, hey, I'm spiraling in the middle. What did you do about this? And they're just like, oh, Sandy, we don't talk about that. And it was like, well, that's the
But
space I'm in.
but in that spiral, and this is where I am right now, not necessarily spiraling, but trust me, there are times that I still am. But when you're in that, are you able to recognize it as, now that you're journaling? Because I want to step back too, because when you talk about the journaling aspect and like how you kind of give a therapist or a coach, just kind of like, here's what we want to talk about. I think it's so much easier said than done. People talk about goals. They just set your goals and go towards it. Like, to really know what you want and what you want to be. And you talk about the tombstone, like that. I never thought about that. So for 40 years of my life, I was like, I was again in reactive mode, but like learning different things, but like to really sit with that, that's a really hard. So I love the fact that you talk about journaling too. Because I think that takes a lot of internal, because our brains can tell us, we have inner critics, we have, like to really say like, this is what I think. And it's not just this ego that's driving it again, or saying, I'm going to push harder in my corporate job when I know it's not aligned. Like all that stuff takes some like deep work. But the spiraling part too, I feel like since I've been doing this work to figure out what is the business I want to build, what is the life I want to build, I feel like I'm a little bit faster in noticing the spiraling. And that often is a sign of something that's getting uncovered. Like, so the flip in my mind is that there's a spiral, but there's something that is driving it that is like, I've got to move forward or through or grow from, like, so all that to say, for you, in this moment now versus perhaps right after your parents passed away and you were in that deep, like, does it look different for you now when you find yourself in that depth, or do you have a different place to go to that kind of, this is the helpful thing to kind of move forward in this moment?
The biggest thing I realized after my parents passed and going through that dark place was I was always in survival mode.
Yeah.
From when I was a
Yeah.
little kid, going through what I went through, um, navigating, in New York City, the careers, moving from New York to Cali was always on survival mode. And I think for most people, men and women, we're always in survival mode. So therefore, we don't take the time to figure out who we are because we're always surviving. We see everything as like, all right, I'm stepping in this restaurant, but let me know the exits. And, let me look at the people coming in. It was just like, Jesus Christ, I really just want to go inside and enjoy a meal, but it's that survival mode. So that was the first thing I realized. I was like, I have been in survival mode for 50 years,
Yeah.
not counting as a
Yes.
child, but
Yes.
it's like you're in survival mode. So for most, we are already conditioned, right? Where we're just talking about career because that's what society wants as women. We are always in survival mode, but we don't know it because we're being reactive, because we're always trying to save a company or a department
Yeah.
or our job or our bonus. It's just, I literally had to remove all of that. Like, okay, so I'm not in corporate America anymore. I'm not working. Yeah, I, need to do this new business just to be able to pay my mortgage and stuff like that. But how can I do this business and be successful if I'm going to still be in survival mode?
Yeah.
If I don't know who I am. So I'm also, going in front of owners and founders and CEOs being like, I can help you fix your operational needs. And I had to sit back and I was like, can I? I was like, yeah, I can do it, like the fundamentals, but emotionally I'm screwed.
Yeah.
My mind is not right. My spirit is not right. And if I'm talking to their staff members or it's like, hey, what are you doing? How do I help them get to the next level? How do I have them scale up? you have to be emotionally sound, right? And that means I can't paint my brush on them because now I'm not working in corporate America. I'm working with corporate America. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that when you try to go in and fix, well, we're fixing what we think is a threat.
Yeah.
Not who the owners or the founders are. So it's like, all right, so you need to figure out who you are. Two, I'm 51. I was like, if I don't know who the hell I am by now, this is a problem. This is a severe problem. And that was another thing where it's like, no, I need to figure out who I am, the versions of me that I love and my passion. So operations is just something that I've always done, but that's not who I am. Elevate within, that's who I am. That's me sharing my story. That's me letting others know, be like, hey, I'm sure you've probably been through something similar than this. I'm going to tell you the unedited version, the dark, ugly truth. And here is what I've done. Talking to that voice back that you hear in your head, that voice that's saying like, you're not good enough. You need to do better. This is stupid. You need to go back to corporate America. Who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
And it was like, I started talking back to it. So when it was like, hey, you can't do this. And I was like, or I can.
Yeah.
Or I can't.
Yeah.
Like, what are you afraid of? And that was a practice where I realized that was a voice that you hear from childhood. You hear in your early careers. You hear always something that keeps you to shrink. And as society, for women, we are taught to like, hey, shrink yourself. And we was like, we want to work, we want to do this. We did. But then I was like, yeah, but you have to put this version of yourself on. You have to smile. You never tell men to smile while working. Be like, why are we not smiling? Be like, typing? You really want me to smile while I'm typing? Like, come on. Like, come on.
This is who I am. Yeah, come on.
It's like, so finding, and I still do it every day, you know, I don't spiral as much. I can feel it and it becomes, it's not just emotionally, but it will affect us physically. So especially going through that premenopause where I was like, all of a sudden it's like, it's hot. It's hot. I'm stressed. I don't have it together. Then you have that brain fog and it was just like, wow. I need to talk about this too. And I need to see if others are going through that. And sharing those experiences with people. And so I say like Elevate Ops is something that I want to grow and it'll be successful where I'm able to sell it or pass it on. Elevate Within, where I'm building this network, this community of women, you know, whether they're in corporate America or not, you know, it's like, hey, we need a support system, especially what's going on nowadays. In this past couple of years, it's like, hey, they're starting to push us back. So we need to like, you know, start marching again.
Yep.
But now it's like, I have 51-year-old knees. So my knee is a little bad. So we don't need to actually physically march. We can do this virtually.
That's why we're online. That's why we're online. We're marching online. We're going to get a lot.
And building that support of, you know, when you are spiraling. And we need that outlet. So it'd be great to be like, I want to text or jump on a Zoom call. Help.
Yeah.
I'm spiraling. And have the women come in and be like, all right, talk to me. You know, bouncing ideas off of each other. So that's what I'm building.
Sandy, I love I mean, I love so many aspects of your story, but the one thing I'll say now is it's such a great example of, because you're in operations again in finance, it's like this analytical side. And I know what I know to build a business is you have to you get clear on who you want to work with, the types of services you want to deliver, get really clear on your confidence on that you are good at what you've done. So all that stuff requires kind of this analytical and confidence building. What it also requires in equal measure is a little bit of letting go. And your story is such a good example of that because as you're building Elevate Ops, you are open to the opportunity, what comes, like you've talked about telling your story, someone mentions Substack. Let me see where that goes. Let's build this community. And I think it's a perfect balance of what entrepreneurship, or just kind of forget entrepreneurship, but really finding your authentic self, is like knowing deep down who you are and what you want to serve, or the people you want to serve, and then being open to how that like kind of manifests in the world and what opportunities come up. And it's exciting to see your path to now, and then know that there's so much more. I know you've got a bunch coming this year. We talked about you have a podcast coming out too. So I'm excited for like where your story can lead to, and others that you bring in and kind of can learn from that too. So thank you for sharing all of that, because I think so many people can see aspects of themselves in your story. I think it's so important that we share our stories for that reason. And I guess the last I want to ask you is like now, and I know you're still early in this entrepreneurship journey, but it's exciting to see where you go. Like, what is success to you now? And I don't want to say success, but I do think that's like, what is happiness in the day to day after having kind of left your corporate job and feeling so out of alignment? Like, what is the goal or the hope now in what is happiness and authenticity to you in the day to day?
Where I'm no longer living as if I have to survive, where there's like immediate danger, where everything is intentional. Um, it's purposeful. If I can help, one or two people, if they were like spiraling or going through something, or they had a question, it was like, well, here's what I did, and be like, hey, that worked. That's, to me, is like, yes, this is how I want to live the next phase of my life. I want to be at peace. I want to start accepting love and
Yeah.
love back in return. Being in business, and especially in corporate America and the C-suites, we remove the human feelings. We don't want feelings. We can't have feelings. We can't show emotion. So I'm enjoying feeling emotions again, not
Yeah.
anger. That was like the big thing,
No, but
right?
I
Anger,
agree. Yeah. You kind
frustration.
of, yeah. Yeah.
So it's, even though it sounds so simplistic, it's something that we actually have denied ourselves. We
I,
don't feed
yep.
our soul. We
Yep.
don't say like, I love you.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? And
Yeah.
truly mean it. Be
Yeah.
like, listen, what
Like,
can I do
like
for
real
you? I
connection.
love you. I see you. Let me help you. Like, if you do need company, bringing back that human connection again, because now we are, virtual and stuff like that. It was like, hey, I'll come over, and then I can just sit with you. We don't have to talk, but do you need me to
Yeah.
hold you, hug you, or wipe your tears, or make you coffee or tea, or, you know what I'm saying?
I
We
do. So,
lost the
I mean,
simplistic.
Sandy, I thank you for saying that, because again, I don't minimize. I mean, I am in finance and help people with their numbers. So I don't minimize the need for income and cash and to cover your expenses. But every single person I've asked on this podcast, no one has said success to them is a certain dollar amount. Because what most of us, all of us that I've talked to have realized, and thank you for saying what you said, it's kind of a leading question, is success is this connection. It's the happiness that you can find in the day to day. And honestly, that is separate from if your basic needs are met, the happiness comes from that. And that is what I've kind of had to evolve and continue to, especially I mentioned before we started recording this podcast, for me is exactly what you're talking about. I think about it, I'm like, strategically, does this bring business, and is it bringing any revenue in? It is about connection for me and sharing that, because that is what feeds my soul. And I love these conversations, and yours included. This is what does it for me. So I couldn't agree more. You're like, our values are in alignment with that too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
thank you for sharing your story. I do want everyone to know, how can they find you, work with you, reach out to you, where kind of give your website and social.
Yeah, sure. So for any operational needs, they can definitely find me on elevateopsadvisory.com. If you are looking for more of mentoring, or, unfiltered conversations about growth or rebuilding, or everything that's in between that, then it's Elevate Within, and you can find that on Substack. And I actually released 3 episodes on my podcast, Elevate Within. So you can find that
Congratulations.
on
I love that.
Spotify and YouTube, as well as Substack. And any professional connections, or if you want another place you can reach out to me, is Sandra Davis at LinkedIn.
I will put all of that in the show notes. So for any of you listening who want to reach, connect, follow along the journey, learn from all of your lessons, you can go to any of these links. So I'll make sure that people can reach out to you, Sandy, because I'm excited to. And also make sure to follow and continue along to her journey, because I know you've got some other stuff coming with your podcast and stuff too, and the community that you keep talking about. So I'm excited. I'm excited to just kind of have this conversation and to see all the stuff that 2026 and beyond brings you. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on this podcast. I appreciate you and everything that you're doing.
I appreciate you as well. Always with that huge, beautiful smile. Never stop smiling. Trust me.
Same. Okay. Hey there. If this episode sparks something for you, I'd really love to know. Shoot me an email or leave me a comment on the episode. Those messages really do mean more to me than you realize. And if you're craving more clarity in your business or your career, you can explore ways to work together at www.scalewithclarity.com. You guys, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to the episode. I always love recording these and sharing them with you, and looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Scale with Clarity.